Is okay. Weird. Okay. I guess there's a few things that come up to make sure that I don't accidentally go live. But then I think I've gone live, and then I talk to myself for like a good minute or so. And so here we are. As per usual, I'm going to kind of wait and make sure that I have audio running before I say something, before I say anything too important. I'm going to sort of hum to myself for a little while. Let me see. Okay, there we are. We're good. If it's too loud, let me know. I don't, just help me out. If it's too loud, if I'm gonna try to play something, and so again, I'm just such an amateur when it comes to this. Thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for being there with me as I learn this skill that all modern people need to have, the ability to live stream, I guess, and carry on conversation in the mystical, magical world of the internet. So lots of things going on in the world of strange theology. I'm glad that you are here. Glad that we get to hang out together. Let me see. I want to get a few things. Well, that's sort of annoying that I have this. Let's see. Oh, we could look at that for a second. I don't want to do that. We could look at that. Okay, let me go back, and we're on. Okay, you just got a sneak peek to the next. This is the next video that's coming out. The next podcast video that's coming out. Okay, I'm working on that, and it's gonna be good. It's gonna be wild. So, James Lindsay. Okay, here's where I am. Mystical, secular man denies the spirits and then gets angry that the spirits don't exist. Why is this? James Lindsay, just going off on Christian orthodoxy, I guess, Christianity, any type of mysticism, anything that seems too woo-woo on his end. He just declaring mysticism as his enemy. I engaged with this for a minute, and I thought it was interesting. I thought James Lindsay is illustrating a point for us that is worth talking. This is the conversation, I think, that's going on right now. And I shared a post from Blurry Creatures a while ago, but it bears repeating, as I sort of scroll through these things. This I thought was really interesting. The reason people get sucked into New Age is mostly because the church has removed all supernatural, spiritual, all the spiritual nature of our faith. The spiritual nature of our faith. It's stripped of its power in most churches. Yeah, I actually just preached a sermon on Luke chapter 4, and it's interesting because Luke sets up that by saying that Jesus was led out into the desert by the Spirit, and then he was filled with this Spirit, and then he goes to Galilee, his hometown. It says he goes in the power of the Spirit, and then he quotes Isaiah, and he says, "The Spirit is upon me," And I think that when we kind of overlook the spiritual nature of our faith, I think it does leave a vacuum. Now, is it mysticism? Is it a mystical thing? That is kind of where I'm at as well. How much mysticism is there in Christianity? Is mysticism a good word even? So, excuse me as I scroll through my Twitter timeline here to get back to James Lindsay, but I've thought about this because I don't know that I fit well inside any one particular denomination per se. I didn't grow up as a Christian. I actually grew up as an atheist. And I gave my life to the Lord. I was about 16 years old. And so I had a lot of this sort of Dawkins-y, kind of angry, maybe atheism in my life, and God rescued me out of that, and yet didn't necessarily put me squarely in any sort of Christian denominational framework. I became a missionary right after I got saved, and so I interacted with a bunch of different Christians from all walks of life as I traveled the world as a missionary. But I think it's interesting to think back through that and to read something like James Lindsay and to think with that Blurry Creatures quote in the back of my mind, where is the church today? And is there a sense that Christian mysticism is maybe on the rise to really answer the call, I think, of what people are hungering for? We've inherited this sort of secular framework from the Enlightenment and from modernity. And this is James Lindsay. How do you verify a mystical experience? That's a very like rationalistic question. That would be a question maybe for, I don't know, maybe the Enlightenment. Certainly modernity would ask that question. How do I verify this thing? But of course, the person who has gone through a mystical experience, do they need it to be verified? Like, am I putting this together in a book report and I'm sending it off to be verified to somebody? No, I had an experience, and for me as a Christian, I think there is a lot of mystery within how I interact with God. I mean, there should be. Like, God is not a toy that I can understand him. God is infinite. The Christian concept of God is the infinite personal creator of all things, and the Christian view of humanity is that we are finite and we are fallen. And because of that, we approach God with fear and trembling, with awe, with wonder. And we know that mystery will never run out. So is mysticism the right word? I don't know. I was talking with my friend Sam earlier today, who has been on the podcast before, and we were talking about this. If I could just take the ISM off of mysticism, and I guess you just get Christian mystic. And there's a long tradition of Christian mystics. You can think of the Desert Fathers. There's something to that approach that I think will appeal to people who are feeling that the inheritance that we have from the Enlightenment is failing them. There's more to the world than just stuff. And I have really, really enjoyed the Haunted Cosmos podcast. If you haven't found that yet, I will probably be bringing it up, because that's one of the things, that they talk about is the world is not just stuff. So how do I verify a mystical experience? I put this John Lennox clip here, which is worth it. And if you don't follow on Twitter, it's just Strange Theology on Twitter. X, forgive me, Elon. I guess it's X. And this is John Lennox talking about how do you trust your brain from a purely rationalistic standpoint? Of course, as a Christian, I have to be careful. I'm not trying to be irrational. I think that there, all right. So let me back up for a second, because I just talked about mysticism. In the context of Christianity, I think mysticism will fit because we rely on divine revelation from an infinite personal God. And in that revelation, God has obviously spoken to us rationally so that we can understand what he has revealed, but we are not rationalistic. We are not rationalists. We don't take human reason and set it up as though it's the authority on all things. It is certainly important that we maintain rationality, and I think that's what people are afraid of when it comes to mysticism, okay, is that it'll become irrational. So is Christianity, or is Christian mysticism, again, I feel like that's probably the wrong word, the answer, because it is both rational and it is both mysterious. It's both of those things at the same time, because the revelation we receive from God it's the Word. It's also the person of Christ. How is Christ also the Word? I don't know. And I think I have to be okay with pursuing that and believing that there is knowledge to be gained, believing that there is knowing to be had there, but ultimately realizing that is a mystery to me. We're Trinity as a Christian, and I would call myself sort of Reformed, so maybe I do fit into some camp. I'm not I am a Trinitarian, so I'm not one of those Christians who says they're Christians and then denies the Trinity. But I also admit that the Trinity is very mysterious. How is God three in one? God is, and I have a short on this from Nabil Qureshi. God is one being in three persons, and so they're not mutually exclusive. Just like I think knowledge and mystery don't necessarily have to be exclusive. Paul Vanderklay has I forget where he got this, but I think he says, knowledge is the enemy of enchantment. If somebody knows where that came from, let me know. I think that's what it is. Knowledge is the enemy of enchantment, I think, in every other area except for theology. And so, okay, thank you for hanging with me on that. I come full circle here to a person like James Lindsay, who is saying, how do you verify mystical experience? And my question to him from a rationalistic standpoint is, how do you verify anything? If my brain is just the end product of a process that didn't have me in mind, it's just time plus matter plus chance. I know they don't like that. Then really what's going on in my mind is that my whole, who I am is really just I'm a machine that responds to stimulus. So the thoughts that I have, the reasoning that I'm doing, and I'm doing really good reasoning. I'm an enlightenment rationalist, and I'm really figuring everything out, doing lots of thinking with my brain, that if you really think about it, if there's no God, there's no creator, there's no purpose to your brain is just responding to its environment. So it's just a chemical reaction going on. So my ideas cannot be trusted because they're as much a part of the environment as the wind blowing the leaves. It's not really teaching me anything. It's just responding. And so John Lennox's video, I think, does a really good job, much better job of explaining that than I just did. But there it is. And so I also thought that this Jordan Peterson interview was really, really good. And I linked the spot. It's probably 2/3 of the way into the video where Jordan Peterson says that we're in a post-enlightenment. Now, I wonder if this will play. Let me see.
I think we're at the beginning of the counter-enlightenment. The propositions, the Enlightenment view of man is wrong. And this, out of the Enlightenment view came science. But the science now indicates that the Enlightenment view of man is wrong.
What do you mean?
Well, the Enlightenment types believe that we could orient ourselves in the world, let's say empirically, and this is Sam Harris's proposition, you can abide by the facts. You can orient yourself as a consequence of the dispassionate analysis of the facts. You can't.
Yeah. So, okay. And he goes on, but I like that little, that clip there of him just saying, you can't really orientate yourself to reality just from man beginning from himself alone. And this is Francis Schaeffer's point. And I really think Francis Schaeffer and Jordan Peterson would make great interlocutors. They'd make great dialogue partners. Of course, Schaeffer's long passed away, but and that's part of the project here is we're gonna resurrect some of these speakers because Schaeffer has a long documentary on video. I guess it's on the internet as well. It's on YouTube as well, but a long documentary where he lays out his whole sort of framework, his philosophical framework there. But a lot of it sounds like Jordan Peterson today. And so that idea of man beginning from himself alone and just trying to empirically orientate himself to reality it's an idealistic hope for the humanist, and is showing it. I think what we're seeing today is that it's ultimately failed. I think we've been seeing it for a long time, but I think that there are other forces at work propping up humanism. And so, we go back to James Lindsay, and I kind of got involved, and so I'm just going to rehash this. And if you have any questions, if you're here, or even if you're watching the video post recording here, if you're watching the VOD after the fact, hit me up with some questions, because I love dialogue. I love responding to this. But one of the things that I thought of is Anselm's epistemology. If you're familiar with Anselm, he's famous for his ontology, but his epistemology, I think, is really good. And it has to do with belief comes before knowledge. You have to believe something, and this is to Jordan Peterson's point. You have to believe something is true, and that thing orientates you to reality. Now, you hope that that thing really is true. You think that it is the truth. But belief comes before knowledge. And if you think about James Lindsay and some of these guys, it's just like my brain is just a chemical reaction. That belief, you have to believe that your brain is capable of rational thought. So that's a belief. Belief comes before knowledge. How do you prove? How do you verify that your brain is capable of rational thought? If we're just in this, we're sort of in a hopeless system. So then I said naturalism is boring, and there's the Haunted Cosmos, one of the Haunted Cosmos guys. And James says that he's never found that to be the case. Now, I thought this was sort of a boring response, right? So naturalism is boring. I've never found that to be the case. Okay, look closer, and is nature full of wonder? Yes, it is. Because God is filled with personality, and God is in sort of put that in his creation. It's thick with his personality. There's life, and there's when you can think of a baby deer jumping through the forest. It's just full of life. You can think of G.K. Chesterton's quote about God, sort of being younger than we are, because God has just a perpetual capacity for enjoyment. He says to the sun every morning, rise again, do it again, just like a kid would when you throw them up in the air. They'd say, do it again. Okay, so in a sense, the natural world to me as a Christian is filled with wonder, but naturalism is boring because we've stripped away the idea of God, and now we're just left with stuff, and that's boring. And this is why I recommended The Hideous Strength by C.S. Lewis, because the world is more than just stuff. And then I thought this, okay, and then he said, this holiday season I discovered there are a lot of conservatives who think they're wizards or otherwise mystics, and that's somehow okay. And so I thought it was that really the people who can't tolerate mystery settle for naturalism. Right? And that's maybe where we are. That's maybe where we find ourselves. And so I thought that was at least somewhat interesting interchange there from James Lindsay, the secular man who denies the spirits and yet gets angry at the spirits that they don't exist. Gets angry at the spirits that don't exist. It's like we want to blame God for all the problems that we see, but then we've forgotten that we've denied the existence of God, haven't we? So who's really responsible here? So there's that. Any questions on that, let me know. I think I'm gonna jump back into this this video that we did, which I thought, you can
just
look
want to
at this
leave.
Justin
12
Brierman.
hours of uninterrupted pain relief.
That's me playing. This is one of the evidences that I think maybe the secular world, maybe modernism, I don't know, has failed us. His whole thing, and I haven't gotten into this much, so if you have, share your thoughts. I've got so much that I want to do and listen to that this one has kind of gone on the shelf. But the surprising rebirth of the belief in God. I think the question for me and kind of the project for this podcast is what comes into your mind when you think about God is really important. God can't just be some sort of placeholder. You really need to think hard about what you mean by God. And I think that Jordan Peterson does go into that in this interview a little bit. That could be fascinating. So it's actually this one down here. What is this? This is what's his name? Will. Anyway, there's that. So Eden. So this was the last podcast I posted. Sorry for there's the free ad. Joe Rogan and Graham Hancock explore the origins of ancient humanity and the possible afterlife. This one is funny for me because I did it so long ago that I almost have forgotten what the video was about. But I thought there were some good comments, so I want to do that. And if you guys ever want to share a comment that you don't want me to read, maybe let me know. I mean, obviously they're public here, so I'm assuming everybody that has shared a comment on my video doesn't mind that it's public and doesn't mind that we might look at them closer in a podcast like, or in a live stream like this. Again, part of my desire, part of my purpose is to create dialogue. So rather than posting and ghosting like most people do, like, don't look at the comments, don't look at the comments. And I get the reason for that. I want to look at the comments, and I want to create a culture around this podcast where these are good comments. Like, even people who disagree with me, please come in and think, be thoughtful about how you form your comment and how you generate dialogue. Don't just come in and say, this is dumb. I've gotten a few of those. And again, it's boring. It's boring. Like, okay, you don't agree, but why? Why is it dumb? Why do you think it's dumb? And so yeah, that's what I want to do right now, is I want to jump into some of these comments, because I thought it was, I thought these are good. I think this is part of why I want to do a live stream. Part of the whole project here is dialogue. Let me look through here really quick and just make sure I'm not missing something. Oh yeah, I had kind of mentioned my story of coming from atheism, and maybe I will unpack that more in another time. But I just felt like, as a person who came out of atheism, this whole James Lindsay spat that was going on was kind of in my wheelhouse, and I don't know. Maybe I'll open up about that a little bit more at another time. I don't want to get too, I don't want this just to be a story time with Pete, which maybe that's fine. If that's what you like, all right, let me know. But, yeah, I'm going to take a drink of water and then we'll get into these comments. Howard again with a gem. Always appreciate your comments. Paul Vanderklay's latest video on Jonathan Peugeot and James Lindsay's. I think that one, I hadn't watched that one when I posted this video, but I thought it was interesting that what Howard's pointing out is that there's a phenomenon going on, and it is partly that the internet is influencing. We're sort of influencing each other, right? And I say we, even though how much influence I have is pretty small compared to everybody else. But you hear Jonathan Peugeot say something, you hear Paul Vanderklay say something. You might hear, of course, Paul and his channel. He covers a lot of Jordan Peterson. He's covered a lot of the ARC conference. What else has he done? It's stuff that I have not had the time to cover. And because Paul is covering it, I'm kind of like, okay, I'll stick to Joe Rogan and some of these other topics. And again, the topic of giants has come up again because of Twitter, and somebody linked a video from Inspiring Philosophy. And so here I am back. I'm thrown into the conversation about Genesis chapter 6. So stay tuned to that. I'm going to unpack kind of my whole thought. I'm going to try to put the whole Genesis 6 Nephilim giants thing to bed in some degree, and I'm sure it'll just open up more. But it'll be giants from Genesis to Revelation. That's the idea. We're looking at not just hyper focus on Genesis 6 and just kind of going, this is weird. What do we make of it? What do we make of it in the larger context of the whole Bible? And so Paul is going off on things, and I hope that maybe we can sort of meet in the middle somewhere, and we're not being redundant. I do listen to Paul Vanderklay. I don't listen to everything. He puts out a ton. Yeah, so the religious question is central to everything right now. Where else? He had another one. Okay, when you look at what is penned in the conference in London this month, the issues are genuinely becoming front and center to so many key discussions and realms on YouTube right now. And it feels like a shift is coming and maybe on the way. And that, to me, is exactly right. And I wonder how many other people feel that. So if you feel that, what is your sense? What is shifting in the conversation? And I mean, it feels like so much is happening so fast. And it feels like, I don't want to like say it's from like COVID, because that's, I don't know, but it definitely seems like that flipped a switch for a lot of people. And now we're not sort of in this comfortable place where like, oh, this has disrupted us. And maybe some people tried to use it to gain control, but the side effect of it is it woke a lot of people up. And I do think Paul brought this up in one of his last videos. It's like every time we think that we've got, Jesus out of the way and secularism and modernity has won and rationalism has won, it's like somehow Jesus has found his way back in front and center. He sort of sneaks in because he's in everything. This is God's world that we live in. And so that shift that's coming, I really saw it on Joe Rogan. That's where I saw it. And for me, and I think I even shared this on Twitter, it would be annoying for me to try to find it because I'm just not that fast. But I did a whole Twitter thread of the Joe Rogan conversations that had to do with spirituality, in particular, at least around Christian spirituality. And oftentimes they were even talking about Christian spirituality without knowing it. And that's the Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson conversations that really clued me in, because they're talking about the biblical flood all the while denying the authenticity and the authority of Scripture. So they've come to the same conclusion from a very different means. And so here we are, sort of Jesus and his word has sort of snuck back into the conversation. So that shift for me, and I'd be curious to know what you guys think as well. But the shift for me is, in some way you could think about it like this. Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, and some of these people who speak into culture today, their voices are big enough that they sort of create their own momentum. And that's one way to look at it. Or is someone like Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, etc., are they barometers for what's already going on? And they are helping us see the bigger picture because of their reach, because of how big their podcasts are. And I've said this before, but to me, it just keeps coming back. This was Socrates looking at the city. He said, okay, in order to see what's going on in the soul of man, we have to look at the city, because the city is a zoomed in picture of the soul. It's the soul writ large. And today we have Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan for that. We just have and is it even bigger than Socrates looking at Athens? We today looking at this phenomenon that's going on online. So the shift is 100% real, I think. Yeah. So, and that is honestly one of the reasons why I'm here doing this podcast. So, Ryan says, I often feel like new atheists desire to have their cake and keep it too, morally speaking. They wanted to hold onto and even judge the deities and religious people by the morality that naturalism couldn't account for. And that is a gem right there. That's what we're talking about with James Lindsay. Very well said and succinct. Similarly, these gents seem to be advocating for supernatural experiences. We so want a God made in our image. That is so good. They are advocating for supernatural experiences. And that is the DMT discussion. That is, so Joe Rogan and Graham Hancock, they're talking about how people are suffering through pain. People are suffering through the fear of their own mortality, and DMT comes in to sort of help them. And that is why I thought Jonathan Peugeot's commentary on DMT was really helpful, because Peugeot is looking at it from a Christian perspective. And so, yeah, they want a supernatural experience. I think that is so true, right? We don't want God. We are rebellious, in that sense. But we also don't want to look foolish and be duped into superstitions. And so we want to control it. We want it to be controllable. And so rather than having a mystical experience that comes from encountering God, we want to take a pill. We just want to give me the DMT, which is a plant-based natural substance and could be beneficial for people as a medicine. But from the supernatural experience thing, it's like, yeah, I just give me the pill. That's easier than confronting the God who created all things. The pill is much more safe. And this was the, oh man, where did I post that? I don't know. Oh, this was the it was an interview. Oh, it was this one. This ex-Muslim. This was on. What is it on?
I don't.
What's this podcast called? Forgive me. Give me a second. Trigonometry. That's right. Right. She's like, can we have a nice Christianity? And I'm thinking, no, you can't have a nice Christianity. If yes, we are terrified to confront the face of God. And that is a clue that you might be starting to grasp who God is if you're terrified. If you want to reduce Christianity down to nice Christianity, you have to jettison everything Christian about it. Because, well, I mean, to some degree, you can have the lamb without the lion. Well, no, you can't. Christ is the lion and the lamb. So if you want the niceness, if you want the lamb, you got to take the lion with you as well. And if you're afraid of confronting God, you might be onto something. Maybe your view of God is just starting to get big enough that you're finally starting to sort of grasp what we're talking about when we say God. And so, but that's not what the naturalist wants to do. That's not what the rationalist wants to do. They want things to be understood in their own sort of finite way. So, oh man, elitist havoc. Okay, cool. This is the first time I've seen you comment. Thanks for being here. Fully understand that unifying our suffering through Christ. But then, why has God placed these natural substances in the world? Which is a great question. This is natural, Now, how much of post-fall comes into that conversation of, again, God created everything good. He created everything very good. That's all pre-fall Garden of Eden reality. Now we live in a post-fall reality where everything is corrupted. Sin has so corrupted the world. And I think that, to me, it is the reason why you take a substance is part of that question. I do think the reason you take a substance has a lot to do with its effect on you, more so with psychedelics. There can be healing, I think so, but the path to revelation for the Christian comes through Christ, which is a free gift. So to take a psychedelic for the purpose of gaining that revelation would be, in my mind, sort of a rejection of the gift that God has already provided for us. So again, why are we taking that pill? That's the question. I do think this is Peugeot as well. He sort of says, be cautious of wisdom that is too easily gained. If it's sort of free wisdom, then be very, very cautious of that. All right. Yeah, it's the closest you can get to a red pill. Yeah, and then this question of the deities that you might be opening yourself up to again. This goes to the next podcast that I'm doing. I might have hinted about it already, but like in a previous, not in this live stream. I know I've hinted at it in this live stream, but the entities, are we living in a world that is more full of life than we realize, and is part of that life just in utter rebellion to God, and what's its effect on us? That's going to be the next podcast. That's going to be the next episode. We're going to look at the giants in Genesis 6 again. I've done a few of that, but then I'm really starting. So Michael Heiser had a book, he did a podcast called I think it's just John's use of the Old Testament in the book of Revelation. And that is fascinating. That is really fascinating. As I sort of I need to wrestle with my own eschatology a little bit more. Like I said, I didn't grow up in the church, and to some degree, I have kind of put this one on the shelf. I've always thought, well, the end will come. Like, I'm not going to miss it, right? Jesus comes, that's the end. Like, that's as much as I understand. Why do I need to get all hot and bothered and get out the charts and the graphs and all that stuff? And I think I did say this before. I think when I became a Christian, the Left Behind books were coming out, and it just left kind of a bad taste in my mouth. Sorry if anybody's a fan there of the Left Behind books, but yeah, they did not encourage that. It kind of made me want to reject that whole thing. So I did. I didn't really pursue it because I thought it was going to make you a weirdo, but I'm there now because I think it's really important, and I think it's all part of this conversation that does kind of come back to this secular life ultimately not answering all the questions that we have. It's not fulfilling us. It's not really explaining what's going on. And people sort of, they look at what's going on, maybe politically, geographically, and they sort of wonder, they go, why is this happening? Why is this happening again? This was this Abraham's Two Nations video, people looking at Israel, looking at what's going on geographically, politically, and saying, how could this be? But I think if you look at it from Scripture, you're like, well, this is just the way it's going to be. And I think, and thankfully, as a Christian, for those who believe in Christ, there is victory there. And so my heart goes out, and my prayers go out to people who have not found Christ, and they look at the world, and it terrifies them what's going on. Whereas the Christian, maybe to some degree, has a leg up in the ability to look at the world. Let me see, the ability to look at the world and say, okay, I know where this is going, and where it's going is good. It is good. It is ultimately good, right? It looks horrible. It looks really bad right now. And when you look at Genesis chapter 6, you're like, oh my gosh, if this is really what like Michael Heiser and some people are saying it is, that is horrible. That is a horrible perversion of God's reality. But then you go to Revelation and you go, okay, he wins. This book is apocalyptic, but it's also sort of John understanding his own time. And I believe John wrote the book of Revelation. I believe he also wrote the Gospel of John, but maybe I can unpack that more, or maybe I can learn more about that. It is ultimately a book that encourages the churches living through their chaotic moment in history. It is also a book that helps us live through our chaotic moment in history, and I think actually gives us some really amazing hope. This Babylon has been destroyed, and that takes me, to today, right? What are these forces that we're seeing? I haven't. I resist doing too much political commentary because my channel is Strange Theology. It's a channel for theology. But of course, theology in my mind, the way I understand theology affects everything. It affects all manners of life. So, but I do resist getting too much into, let's just say, any sort of powerful organization that has intent on a universal, unifying way of speaking or currency or something like that. And I'm trying to be vague on purpose because I think certain platforms that we might exist on might be more cozy and more friendly with those organizations than maybe the church, than maybe, and I say, and I put the church in there because, and I'll give you a little hint, the future podcast that I'm gonna finish that podcast. I think I'll finish it today, maybe Saturday, and then it will live in the members section of this channel because apparently I have a members section. So if you want to support the channel that way, that is one way to do that. And if I can maintain, I do this part-time, so if I can maintain this schedule, there will always be one in the maybe I shouldn't say that on YouTube. There will be one waiting in the wings as the current one is up. And I'm a little bit behind right now. I'd like to get this next video out. But basically, you do have Babylon, the city that's called the whore. But you have Zion, and Sam and I were talking about this. Sam, are you here, by the way? If you're here, hit me up. You might have gone, but I'd just like to know. This city of God is in contrast with the city of man. Of course, Babel, these are men trying to make a name for themselves. But the city of God glorifies God. It's a city of people. And you can think of Abraham. God makes Abraham into a great nation and gives and makes Abraham a great name. It's God that does it for Abraham, not Abraham doing it for himself. And so you see these, you can call them organizations today in the world that we live in today as being sort of the anti-church. And I don't think of the church so much as an organization as a family. And that's really what it is. The family has been broken down to just an organization. That's unfortunate, but there are these organizations that would set themselves up to kind of, gain power or whatever it might be. So of course, when you read the book of Revelation, you see what John is doing. He's looking at his own day. He's also potentially looking at our day, or even a day in the future for future Christians to read. I think that is part of the gift of Scripture, is that it is timeless in that way. And so we're going to be looking at that. We're gonna take all these themes, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. You see all these themes from Genesis, from the Old Testament, and you go into the book of Revelation. You realize, okay, that's what's going on. And what is it ultimately? Let's see if I'll get to this passage. Okay. Is it an 8? Oh, do I have it? I wonder if I have it highlighted. That would be easy if I had it highlighted. But the Lamb is victorious. They overcome the Lamb by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. I'm so bad at remembering the references, the addresses for these things, but I'm in there. But anyway, that's the verse that I would, is it 17 or 18 have come out of her? Let's see. All my highlights are gone, which is weird. I don't know why. Victory for the Lamb. They will wage war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, because he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings. And those who are with him are called the chosen and faithful. And he said to me, the waters which you saw, where the harlot sits, are the peoples and the multitudes of the nations and the tongues. And the 10 horns which you saw, and the beast, these will hate the harlot, and they will make her desolate and naked. And they will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God has put it in her heart to execute his purposes by having a common person. So isn't it this, again, it's God using the schemes of the enemy to defeat the enemy. Christ conquers death. How? Through his death. How is the Lamb victorious, right? I just like that. And there's another passage that I'm even thinking of. Fallen, okay. And after these things, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was illuminated with his glory. And he cried out with a mighty voice, saying, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. So there you go. I mean, I just think it is ultimately, I guess I'll say this: if you don't have Christ, outside of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, there is no hope for humanity. So one way or another, find Christ. How God leads us all on very different paths to get there. And some people come through even psychedelic experiences and paganism and all this other stuff, but somehow Christ is smuggled in and God overthrows the enemy by the enemy's own schemes. And so if you're worried, if you have fear in this world today because of all the schemes that you might be seeing out there, and news is really bad at this, perpetuating this fear, just realize it is the very schemes of the enemy that the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings will use to overthrow that enemy. They will the enemy's sword will turn in on himself. And that, I think, is ultimately something to give us some great hope and to sort of anchor us in this world. And so that's a little heavy. And so I don't know. I do this at noon. So okay. Hey, there is Sam. Sam is here. Okay. Thank you, Sam. This is actually helpful because why? Because I have a hard time seeing these things. I still have something in my live stream to set up that would make that easier for me to see comments. So thank you for sharing your comment. I appreciate you being here. So yeah, hopefully that's not too, it's like this. It is doom and gloom. Of course, it is doom and gloom. Like the world has there's a lot of negativity that we could talk about. And it's in a way, you don't want to skip over that. You don't want to just pretend like that negativity doesn't exist, because then you have no victory over that negativity. I think what Jesus has done for me is allowed me to confront the grave and look beyond the grave, or sort of confront the cross and its death, but look beyond the cross to the empty grave, right? That there is new life. And so the gospel is a gospel that has both the cross and the empty tomb in it. And we look at the chaos of the world today, and that's what Revelation allows us to do, and see the hope through it. We don't deny it. We don't avoid it. We have the ability to go, we have the ability to go through that chaos and that darkness to the victory that Christ has for us ultimately. And it's not a victory that we made. Again, it's Babylon is the anti-Eden, right? It's humanity building a city for themselves. Whereas the place we really want to dwell is the garden that God created for us, or the city of God. You can think of Hebrews 11. And so, okay, thank you guys for being here. It's my day off, so it's like noon on a Wednesday. I do find that most people kind of show up towards the end. If you're here, thank you. Let me know, because I could try to push it back or forward or something like that. So let me know what you think about the live stream time. If you're catching this video after it's gone live, and you're like, I want to be there live, I've got so many questions, but I wish it would just let me know what time works for you. I don't have a huge window on Wednesdays. I could potentially do a Saturday, but let me know. I totally realize that live streaming at noon on a Wednesday is like everybody's busy except for me, because I have an awkward schedule and I actually have a day off today. And so appreciate you guys being here. And again, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know how this podcast could serve you better and could support you, because I realize that the world it's a crazy place. And I hope that by us pursuing some of that craziness and some of that strangeness, we can make sense of the world. So thank you for being a part of that. And Sam, we will have to do another episode soon. If you haven't caught the episodes that Sam and I have done together, maybe I will put those in the description of this video as well. And I will look forward to being with you all next week in the live stream, and I'll look forward to your comments on this video that I will post today, and if not today, Saturday for sure. So look forward to catching up with you then. See ya.